Yeah, I'm watching this damn fight for about the third time. Man, that damn fight was good. Anyway, for about, I know this is probably the third or fourth video I've done on talking about BMSs. But I seen some conversations on Facebook today, and I'm going to go over some BMS stuff once again. Now, I'm not covering everything about BMSs, but if you want to know some stuff about BMSs, check out some of my other BMS videos. Just look in my archives. The reason why I'm going to discuss a BMS today is because I think the most important, you know, people ask all the time, should I bypass or should I bypass my pack? And here's my best answer for that. I'm changing from what I used to say. I'm going to say this now. Unless you understand why you need to bypass, and even the fact that you asking someone else, should you bypass, the answer should be no. If you don't know why you bypassing or why you need to bypass, then you shouldn't be bypassing. Simple as that. Because honestly, the straight up fact about the matter is, when you do bypass your battery, it's because you have the understanding and the knowledge enough to become the BMS at that time. You know, I say it all the time. We make the best BMSs, a battery monitoring system and a battery management system. So only time you should be fully bypassing your BMS, and I mean a full bypass, is when you have enough understanding that you can monitor the voltage, the amps, the output, the temperatures, and all that stuff that, you know, BMSs do, other than you know, the charging side of things. So if you can't do any of that and you need to ask, then no. Never bypass your pack because your buddy that has a e-bike said you should. Because your buddy might have bypassed his BMS. He may be getting good results. However, unless you have the exact, and I mean the exact same setup, that means bike, battery, motor, controller, the whole 9 yards, each and every battery BMS ByPass is gonna have different specs and reasons for why you should or why you shouldn't bypass. All right, so the first thing you need to understand yourself is how much power can your pack actually put out. Now, if you can't determine that by knowing the type of cells that's in your pack and how many cells are in parallel, and is your pack designed to handle a certain amount of amps, then you need to ask whoever you got that pack from, you know, whether that's a battery manufacturer or a private battery maker, and they need to explain it to you. Okay, you need to have a full understanding. All right, now to include a little bit of battery making in this discussion, the only way to determine how many amps your pack can supply cell wise, now we just talking about the capability of the cells right now, because While your cells may have the capability to produce a certain amount of amps, that does not mean that the pack, the BMS, the wires, the connectors, whatever, is going to allow those amps to get to your controller. But first it starts with the cells themselves. Now, these are still millicell. These are just regular P42s right here, okay? Now, P42s are, for one reason they're called P42s, is because they're 4200 milliamps. That is their capacity. That is how much current they can store in milliamps. 4200 milliamps worth of charge. Okay, and the discharge rate on these millicell P42s is 45 amps. All right, so when you're determining a pack's capacity, you have to add up how many cells are in parallel, because you need to know that for its capacity and its discharge rate. Now, what I'm making here is a whole bunch of 2S6P modules. That's how I start off a battery build, especially if it's you know something that's based on a 6P, like 6P, 12P, 18P, 24P. I start off with 2S6P modules. All right, and I only make one connection on one side of them. You have 6 cells in parallel that are in series with another 6 cells that are in parallel. All right, so that is a 2S, 2 cells in series, which is going to give you about 8.4 volts, because they're 4.2 volts each. When you put them in series, the voltage adds up, the current stays the same. When you put cells in parallel, the capacity adds up, the voltage stays the same. Okay, so if you have 6 cells and they're in parallel, let's just say I got one of these cells upside down there. This first row of 6 cells right there, they're going to be in parallel because I'm going to connect them, all their negatives, or if I was doing the other side, I'd be connecting all their positives. All right, that puts when their positives and their negatives are all tied together, those cells are in parallel. And when they're in parallel, that means they're adding up to make one larger battery. So 4200 milliamps, as I said, 6 of them. So that would be 6 times 4200. That would be 6 times 4, which is 24,000, and 6 times 2, which is 1200. So that's like 25,200 milliamps, which is 25.2 amp hour, if my math is right. But that is your capacity. All right, 6 of them in parallel. Now, how many amps can 6 cells in parallel? Okay, so 2S6P millicell pack is going to be 8.4 volts at 270 amps, because that's 6 times 45. And if my math is right, that's what that is, 270 amps, and 25.2 amp hour. So if you were to put 10 groups of these 2S6P packs together in series, that would give you a 72 volt pack, 25.2 amp hour, that could roughly produce 270 amps. Now that means that pack, 6P millicell pack, can make 270 amps. All right, now let's say you had this pack and it had 150 amp BMS on it. All right, 72 volts. That means your battery pack can output 72 volts at 150 amps. Let's say you had a Sabaton 72150 over there. All right, so for a Sabaton 72150, that 150 amp pack is going to be enough to actually run that Sabaton. Now, could you get a little bit more with it bypass? Possibly, for sure. You know, but is it a need to bypass? No. Can you bypass? Absolutely, because that pack is capable of 270 amps, at least with the cells that are in it. All right, what you don't want to do is have a 20S 6P pack that don't have Mylar cells. Let's say these were a cell that could only output 10 amps instead of 45 amps. Okay, so now you would have a 72 volt pack that only is capable of making 60 amps. All right, 60 amps, and that pack has 100 amp BMS on it. All right, now you're attempting to run a Sabaton 72150 off of that pack. Now that BMS is going to limit that pack to 100 amps, even though it can't even really make 100 amps. But even though a pack can't safely make 100 amps, don't mean those cells won't try to deliver it. If you have that Sabaton turned with its max power all the way up, that controller is going to try to pull 150 amps. The BMS is going to regulate it from doing that, but it's going to pull the 100 amps that the BMS is set at. So a smaller cell that's not capable of outputting a lot of amps is going to run hot because it's working harder. All right, now if you were talking about these 6 Mylar cells making 100 amps, they would barely be warm to touch. You probably couldn't even feel them at all if they were pulling less than 100 amps. All right, but those 6 10 amp cells running that Sabaton, and you do a little 20-mile ride, yeah, them babies are going to get warm, heated up a little bit, warmed up. Now let's say that 6P pack that can only make 6 amps, let's say you bypass the BMS on that pack that is only capable of 60 amps cell wise, and you have that Sabaton 72150 turned all the way up. That Sabaton is going to attempt to pull 150 amps from them 60 amp cells, and it might just do it. You know, those cells might actually be able to put out 150 amps. They won't be able to do it long, but it's possible they may could do it. But at the same time, while they're doing it, they're going to get super hot. So that is when you're in you know, that's when something bad can happen, like thermal runaway, because you're pulling more amps than those cells are capable to handle. So you need to know how many amps can your battery, your cells actually make. Never bypass if the cells aren't capable of the amps you're trying to look for. Now, like I said, why would you want to bypass in a situation with a 6P Mylar cell pack? Because that pack can actually put out 270 amps and the BMS is limiting it. So you want more amps? Yeah, you can bypass and get those more amps. And the difference between the Mylar cell and that 10 amp cell is the Mylar cell will produce those amps no problem, run cool and efficient, and you don't have to worry about a BMS on those Mylar cells as far as discharge, because you're not going to have any issues. The cell itself is capable of that output power and will run nice and cool, no problems. So you would that's how you're going to figure out how much your pack can make. And the reason why you would want to, you know, bypass in the first place is because you have a need to. You want more power, and your pack is capable to do it, but it's being limited. Now let's talk about BMSs for a minute, because BMSs, just like everything, when it comes to any and everything, every single component, like I say all the time, you get what you pay for. Premium cells going to perform better than cheap cells. Premium BMSs are going to perform better than cheap BMSs. Now, usually on a lot of P42 builds, I use antenna BMSs, which is a decent and good BMS. It's not top of line, but it's a good BMS. Definitely better than any of the BMSs coming on those Chinese packs from Alibaba. And antenna BMSs, not only that, they are capable of Bluetooth and you know, telemetry, cell data, some of them cell balancing and all that, and I'm not going to get into the cell balancing thing, but basically don't even worry about that cell balancing stuff. You guys, most of you ride way too much for your BMSs to even start the balance cells, because they balance through the leads, the BMS leads, and they're only capable of low amounts of milliamps. And the only way a BMS will actually balance a pack that's out of balance as far as the series stages is if that pack is sitting for a couple weeks, because that's how long it would take to do that. You riding your bike every day, that BMS is never going to get a chance to balance that pack. But anyway, let's look at these two antenna BMSs right here. And like I said, these are good BMSs. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with them. They do what they're supposed to do. And you can even, this one has a display that you could mount on the pack that you're making, or somewhere on the PEV. Okay, now one of these is 150 amp BMS, and this one is 400 amp. Now this is an antenna BMS that is supposedly 400 amps. Now it does say peak on it, peak 400 amps. So RMS wise, it's probably good for 200 amps continuous. Okay, now normally these antenna BMSs come with, all right, so unfortunately guys, I was doing a video talking about BMSs and everything, and shoot, it's so hot out here today, 90 plus degrees, that this damn camera overheated and cut off. I can't remember where I was at, but I'm going to say this, and I'll probably make this into a little short video as a real quick. As I always say, in everything, quality and cost matters when it comes to electronics and performance, even as far as the BMS. Most people know when it comes to me myself, I don't do any bottlenecks on the I don't do any BMSs on the discharge side for myself, because it normally causes a bottleneck with normal or just good BMSs. But there are high performance, premium, good quality BMSs that you don't have to run bypass, that are capable a lot of amps. And for one, like this 500 amp RMS, not peak, 500 amp continuous Dali BMS. You can look at those bus bars on this bad boy and the heat sinks on it and that fan, and this damn BMS costs more than a lot of battery packs. Let me tell you, look at the leads they give you for it. Look how thick those leads are. So when this BMS says it can pass 500 amps, best believe it can most likely pass 500 amps or more, no problem, with low resistance. Okay, as opposed to, even though these aren't cheap BMSs, they're not premium antenna BMSs. All right, where this antenna BMS which says 400 amps. That's peak, not RMS. This BMS, even with the display and everything, may cost about 90 bucks. Can handle about 200 amps RMS continuous, 400 amps peak. The power wires that come on there are 10 gauge. I cut them off because it's cheap wire. I put quality premium 8 gauge most of the time, or 4 gauge depending on the build, but premium copper wire. But yes, and the bus bars inside this BMS are nowhere near as hefty as those bus bars on that Dally. And you know, obviously you see the difference in the two. And this antenna BMS doesn't come with big set of leads like that, so it's not passing 400 amps. You're nowhere near close to what this BMS can pass. And believe it or not, man, this 500 amp Dally BMS is like $600–700 BMS. Okay, so once, like I said, you gotta pay to play. You want to be the boss, you gotta pay the cost. All right, you want a high output premium pack BMS, you know, with BMS, then there it is. Now, even on this Dally, I would offer 2 options like I always do on a pack. One set of leads straight to the pack. Bypass means that's the full output capability of the pack itself, and the other set of leads going through this Dally BMS bypass. Okay, so you have the option, you know, to run safely bypass. Maybe you got a race that day. Maybe, you know, just for that race, you want the full output capability of that pack, so you run the leads that's going straight to the battery. And obviously they would be the same size leads as what's going through the BMS, you know. But yeah, CAN bus, everything, all the bells and whistles. Antenna BMSs pretty much does all the stuff as well. But when it comes to amps and resistance, definitely a big difference in you know, which one can do what it says it's going to do. All right, y'all, that's it for this little BMS talk. I'm going to I'm gonna put this out there ahead of time. I'm going to be offering, I told you guys I got 2 big P45 packs to make first. One pack for someone already, and then my pack. But the first P45B pack I built, 72 volt, at least 50 amp hour. Whoever gets that first pack and pays cash, I'm gonna give up a 72 volt, 50 amp hour P45B pack for the same price as what, you know, one of those other battery companies. 72 volt, 50 amp hour P42 pack. So whatever they selling their 50 amp hour 72 volt P42 pack, I'm gonna sell you, that first person that pays cash, a P45B pack for the same price. And that is a steal of a deal, because P45Bs can do almost 3 times, but I'm definitely going to say 2 times, twice the amount of amps as a P42 pack. So let's say you have in terms of a small pack, 20S 5P P42 pack. A P45B pack 5P would be equivalent to a 10P P42 pack as far as amps, as far as output current. Capacity wise, it's going to be the same. They have the same capacity, but the discharge amps, P45B pack can output double the amps of a P42 pack. Make no mistake about it. And it's not like P42s are chumps, because P42s ain't chumps, but them P45Bs are next level. All right, y'all, take it easy, take care, crisscross and wise. We up out of here. Peace.